Good day everyone, bonjour tout le monde, this is Roger, and welcome to this new episode of BIA, the Dodgers of Canada. In today's episode, we will follow the North American 1st Special Service Force as they break out of the Anzio beachhead on their way to liberate the Eternal City. And to tell that story, we will have a special guest, Mr. Gianni Blasi. We will then move to the Vatican, where the Royal 22e Regiment was received in a personal audience with Pope Pius XII in July 1944. From there, we're going to carry on 180 kilometers north of Rome to Trasimeno Lake, which is the site of an important battle for the Ontario Tank Regiment and Three Rivers Regiment, known today as 12e Régiment Blindé du Canada. In conclusion, we will discover a secret route that was built by the Canadian engineers to move the 1st Canadian Corps in preparation for Operation Olive, the assault on the Gothic Line. The 1st Special Service Force, a combined force of highly trained commandos from the United States and Canada, was formed in August 1942. They trained at Fort William Henry Harrison in Helena, Montana, under the command of Colonel Robert T. Frederick. The force was divided in 3 regiments of intermixed Canadian and American soldiers. They conducted extremely demanding physical training, which include parachuting, advanced winter warfare, mountain warfare, demolition, martial arts, patrolling, and amphibious training. Their first deployment was to the island of Kiska in the Aleutians, off the coast of Alaska, to push the Japanese army off the archipelago. But fortunately, the Japanese had left before they landed, and the operation ended up being a dry one, but it confirmed many acquired skills that will prove useful in Italy. In late November 1943, the force arrived in Italy. Their mission was to clear a series of mountaintops occupied by German forces who effectively had blocked the Allied advance for more than 90 days at the Winter Line, more precisely called the Mignano Gap, a narrow passage surrounded by high mountains that proved to be invincible. It was a perfect task for the North American force. On December 3, 1943, after a daring 2-day climb of Monte La Defensa that would become legendary, the 2nd Regiment engaged the German defenders in their rear, and after 2 hours of battle succeeded to clear the summit once and for all. Following La Defensa, the force carried on to take Monte Rametania, Hill 720 on Christmas Day, followed by the town of Radicosa, and finally Monte Mayo in January 1944. Another extraordinary feat of arms in which the force repulsed at least 47 German counterattacks in the space of 2 days. But out of the 1,800 men of the 1st Special Service Force who arrived at the Winter Line on December 1st, at the end of those mountain operations, only 400 forcemen came down unscathed. They had suffered over 78% casualty rate. After a time of rest in Naples and rebuilding their numbers with reinforcements, the force landed on the Anzio beachhead in March 1944 and took a defensive position on the south side along the Mussolini Canal. Colonel Frederick didn't waste any time and ordered his men to carry out devastating night patrols in enemy territory, leaving their special calling card behind. The worst is yet to come. It had the desired effect on the morale of the enemy, and the no man's land on their side of the beachhead increased by over 2 kilometers wide. On 27 May 1944, after 100 days of standoff, the 1st Special Service Force spearheaded the breakout of the U.S. 6th Corps on their way to Valmontone and ultimately Rome. Now, let's go and meet Mr. Gianni Blasi, who will relate to us the breakout and capture of Rome by the North American 1st Special Service Force.
At the breakout, the force was on the beachhead. Their main objective was to cross the Appian Way and the railroad. But as they were coming out, the veterans have told me that they had never seen more chaos than that. At one point, they found themselves in front of the armor. So the tanks were behind and they were in front. And it was really difficult to know where you were going and what was happening. As they finally came out, they went up Mount Arestino. From Mount Arestino, they went to Cori, Rocca Massima, and this is Mount. And they came over to the top of this mountain. We are in Artena, where they set up their headquarters. Okay, we're standing in front of the headquarters of the force inside the Borghese Palace. And we are now standing on the gateway to Upper Artena, where there is an inscription which says Borghesius, Borghese family. So this was the palace of one of the most powerful families in the history of Rome. And it looks right over the valley, and Highway 6 is about 2 kilometers from here, 1.5 miles, 2 miles at the most. So Highway 6 comes from the Lidi Valley, it comes up and goes through Artena, between Artena and that gray building that you see over there, that's the town of Valmontone. And the Germans had made their stand there. They had dispersed their Tiger tanks, brought in all kinds of stuff, Nebelwerfers and the like, and they were hitting the town very seriously. The force did go down into the valley. From this headquarters, they had a perfect view of what was happening. Forget all the houses that you see here now. There was nothing here, nothing except agricultural land. So this is the attempt to cut them off. But the Germans are making a very efficient stand on defensive positions. The force did not manage to get to the other side. The 3rd Division came in late. When they came in, if you look at the photographs, the fighting's all over. So at that point, the force was taken back to a place called Colleferro. And they took Highway 6 into Rome. They stopped at Tor Pazienza, which is a suburb out of Rome, and then went in 3 different directions. Of course, Mark Ratcliffe with the house force went in first to probe it out a bit and see what was going on. So this is where the final thrust comes, going into Rome. As they go in, there were rear guard operations by the Germans. When you went into the city, they had left a few tanks. There were snipers left and right. And a few of the forcemen told me that they had to take turns at spearheading. And every time they had to turn around a corner. The guy in the lead was thinking, is this the last corner I take? When they finally did get the job done in Rome, Frederick was wounded and he was taken to the American embassy. On the perimeter wall of the embassy, there is that plaque dedicated to Robert Tryon Frederick.
would like to thank the Diascastery of Communication of the Vatican for allowing us to visit the Sala Clementina in the Apostolic Palace in the Vatican. We were able to relive a historical moment. Indeed, on the 4th of July 1944, the Royal 22e Régiment was invited to a personal audience with Pope Pius XII. People in attendance were Major General Georges Vanier, a hero of the Great War, Brigadier General Barney, Lieutenant Colonel Allard, le Capitaine Paul Triquet, and Sergeant Trépanier, among others. After the audience, the members of the regiment were invited to a special Mass inside the St. Peter's Basilica. After the Mass, Major General Vanier took occasion to address the young members of the Royal 22e Régiment in front of the Basilica. I am sure that this was a time for the members of the regiment to renew their faith, but not only that, but to have a time of humanity. And it's something that they must have cherished for the rest of their life, no matter how long or short it might have been.
Hey, hi everyone. I just want to share a quick story with you about Barney Burns. Barney Burns landed in Sicily on the 10th of July, was part of the Canadian Service Army Corps, and on the 24th of July, as he was attempting to deliver some ammunition point for the advancing troops, he was captured prisoner by the Germans. On the 24th of September, he was brought on mainland Italy, and on the 24th of September, as he was being transferred prisoner camp to go to Germany and escorted by 3 Italian guards, him and 2 British officers escaped their Italian guards and made their way into the Vatican. The Vatican being a neutral area, the Germans couldn't chase them in there, but the Swiss guards they wanted to get rid of them. However, the British embassy got involved, and these guys stayed inside the Vatican for a whole year, actually, until the liberation of Rome in 1944. And during that time, when they were inside the Vatican wall, these guys put together and organized, or were part of an organization to help all the prisoner of war that escaped in the area of Rome to find a place to hide until they would be able to go back in the Allied lines, or that the Allied would come forward. Pretty interesting story, I thought, because in the Vatican here there were people actually involved in helping prisoners of war.
Hi John, how are you doing this morning?
Doing well.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
It's supposed to rain and it's not raining yet, so
Crossing fingers.
croisez les doigts.
So we are like first day of shooting in north of Rome, eh?
Yes, with our new
We're
team
with
member
our new
here.
team member that we picked up yesterday in Rome. Padre Hamilton. Hey, how are you doing, Padre Hamilton?
Great.
Yeah, happy to be with us today.
Awesome to be here.
And what's your feeling of the day? No?
Great to the weather's what it is.
Yes.
And we take it as it comes.
Can you hear them?
And great to remember tankers.
Right on.
And what they did.
Today we finally made it north of Rome. as we're following the advance of the Canadians throughout the Italian campaign after the liberation of Rome. A year ago, we interviewed a very fine gentleman, Vernon Dowie, who was a veteran of the Italian campaign. And I want you to listen to what Vernon had to say. I had the surprise for the Americans on the other side of Rome.
We were told by the American general we were not to go into Rome. So Fern Colonel said, fine. He got the whole regiment together and we went around the outside of Rome. And when the Americans came through, we were there to greet them. From there, went up to Florence and then up into the mountains.
From north of Rome all the way to the Trasimeno Lake, the ground was favorable to both the attackers and the defenders. And the advance was pretty quick, all the way to the 21st of June. The Germans had lost a lot of men in the Battle of the Hitler Line and the Battle of the Melfa River. Their units were depleted at an average of 50%. Some units were even as low as 10% effective. And Kesselring had to find another plan to establish another line of defense to stop the Allies from capturing the northern part of Italy, which was the industrial part and the bread maker of the country, and also sustaining the German army. This next line of defense would have to be somewhere around the mountains that are on the other side of Lake Trasimeno and the north, and they established a formidable line of defense that they called the Gothic Line. But to save time to build this line of defense, they had to establish a temporary line of defense, which was right here along the Trasimeno Lake, and with the mission to slow down the advance of the Allies. On the advance north from Rome, General Lees attached the 1st Canadian Armored Brigade to the British 78th Division and the 4th Division because he believed that the 1st Canadian Armored Brigade was the best armored brigade he had under his command at the time and the most experienced one. Remember that this brigade was the brigade that landed in Pachino and conducted the whole Italian campaign all up to this point, and they will carry on the advance even further north. You all see these rolling hills that surround it right now where I'm at, and how the gentle slope seems to be perfect tank country. Indeed, in a dry season, if it's dry, it's perfect for tank battle. However, when it's muddy and full of water, that clay sticks to the track and makes it terrible and the perfect place for tanks to be bogged down. That's exactly what happened here on the 25th of June 1944, when the Three Rivers Regiment C Squadron was supporting the advance of 28th Brigade of 4th Division. The objective was the town of Vaiana to my right, beautiful little town. And what happened, because of the lack of training between the infantry and the armored, they both got separated. The tanks were well in advance, unable to support the infantry, and went about 900 meters past the town to the actual objective of the brigade. Meanwhile, the infantry got engaged by the German paratroopers who were defending the town, and with effective fire coming from wheat fields and different firing positions, and couldn't move any forward. The tanks, on their approach to the next phase, got bogged down in the mud. 7 tanks of C Squadron were actually out of battle. Some of them even lost their tracks. It took them all day to recover, and by the end of the day, the infantry of the tanks to be reunited together to be able to fight the Germans out of the town of Vaiana. Once this was done, we had to pursue the advance, and the next big engagement for the Three Rivers Regiment C Squadron will happen at Casamaggiore on the 28th of June. On the 28th of June, C Squadron of the Three Rivers Regiment were about 2 kilometers north of the town of Casamaggiore. For about 7 hours, they pushed back several German counterattacks. At one point, they ended up behind enemy lines without knowing it. Actually, they found it out when 4 of their Shermans were knocked down in quick succession. In a complete disregard for his own safety, Captain Grant dismounted from his Sherman and conducted the operations from position to position so the Shermans could be able to engage the infantry and the panzers who were still trying to get at them. For this brave action, Captain Grant was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. Meanwhile, A Squadron was able to join back with the infantry and clear the area of the remaining German forces. This happened to be the deadliest action that Three Rivers had been since the Battle of the Hitler Line on the Milfar River, with 11 men killed and 14 men wounded. On the 21st of June 1944, the Ontario Tank Regiment, attached to the Irish Brigade of 78th Division, took the town of Pucciarelli, which is like just there, like in that low ground behind me. On the 22nd of June, A Squadron, Ontario Tank Regiment, with the Enniskillen Regiment, pushed back a lot of German counterattacks. In the meantime, 4th Division was getting into position to carry out the action north of on the left flank of the 78th Division. And on the morning of the 23rd, the Ontario Tank Regiment supported the Irish Brigade, and there was like A Squadron on the left flank, C Squadron on the right flank, and they started the advance from Pucciarelli to a little town which is just in front of me, up that little hill that's called Pescia. As they were moving forward, their German panzers rushed from some farmhouses on the left and started engaging A Squadron. A Squadron was really quick to reply, destroyed 2 panzers, damaged a 3rd one. In the meantime, C Squadron took the town of Pescia with the Irish. At the end of this engagement that lasted 3 days, the Ontario Tank Regiment had 7 men killed and 18 wounded in this battle alone. This set the stage for the advance toward the Gothic Line. Between the 2nd and the 3rd week of August 1944, the 1st Canadian Corps and the 21st Tank Brigade were secretly moved from Perugia area to the Adriatic Coast to prepare for the attack on the Gothic Line. To be able to achieve that, the 12th and 13th Field Company of Royal Canadian Engineers had to build a road to move the vehicles and the tanks through the Apennine Mountains that we have here right behind me. It would be in a road similar to what we have here in that little valley. And in 5 days, they built over 200 kilometers of dirt road. That was a huge accomplishment by itself of engineering. All the vehicles had to be moved by night. Convoys, it took over 8 hours to cross the mountains to the Adriatic. And they were going like bumper to bumper, black light, very slowly, making no noise, not to be detected. In this move, the Canadians alone moved 280 carriers, 650 tanks, and over 10,500 wheeled vehicles. The advance and the capture of Rome by the 1st Special Service Force had cost them 185 Canadian casualties alone. But after 2 months of rest and being refurbished, the 1st Special Service Force will spearhead the amphibious assault in southern France on the 15th August 1944. At the end of July, Major General Fritz Wenzel, Chief of Staff of the German 10th Army, exclaimed, "If only I knew where the Canadians are." The Germans were convinced that wherever the Canadian Corps would be, would reveal the 8th Army main effort. Stay with us, as in our next episode we will relive the battle for the Foglia River and the Gothic Line. Thanks for watching. For BIA Daily Dodgers of Canada, this is Roger. Till we meet again, Custos Memoria.